This is Agriculture Today. I'm Samantha Bennett with the K-State Radio Network. Ahead of us today on this Tuesday's program, we start with Jane Lingenfelser. She is the K-State Crop Performance Test Coordinator, and she's sharing with us the 2022 Wheat Performance Test, including what diseases and insects were prevalent this past year, environmental challenges, and ultimately what varieties had the best yields in specific regions of the state. So that will be our first two segments of today's programming, and then we'll finish out with K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk. He discusses the record-high milk prices seen in June and July and the strength in current milk demand on this week's milk lines. That and more awaits us ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are back now for a much anticipated segment, I'm sure, for many across the state. And that is our Wheat Performance Test segment. We're going to go over the past 2022 Wheat Performance Test. And to do that, we have with us Jane Lingenfelser, and she is going to cover it for us. So, Jane, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and start off with what is the 2022 Wheat Performance Test?
Well, the 2022 Wheat Seed Book contains the results of the Kansas Wheat Performance Tests that I coordinate, and also the directory of certified seed dealers from the Kansas Crop Improvement Association. And this book will be printed August 22nd, and it will be available as an insert in High Plains Journal magazine. And hard copies will be available in local extension offices soon after that. Or they can be ordered directly by calling the KSRE bookstore. That phone number is 785-532-7938, or can be ordered online at orderpub@kstate.edu. But if you can't wait that long for results, the individual location results are already available on our website. That address is agronomy. It's agronomy.ksu.edu/services/crop-performance-tests. And an electronic version of the Wheat book can be found at the K-State Research and Extension Library, and that address is ksre.ksu.edu/bookstore. And this version does not have the certified seed directory, but that can be found at the KCIA website at kscrop.org.
Excellent. Well, I know that was a lot for listeners to take in, so if they're driving right now or multitasking as they're tuning in, we'll have those links, as always, listed in the show notes of today's program, and that can be found on agtoday.net, a little easier to remember sometimes.
And I will repeat them several times through the presentation.
Excellent. Good to know. Alrighty, so now that we've covered kind of what this 2022 Wheat Seed Book actually is, let's get into what it covered. So there was 22 locations this year.
That's right. We have 22 locations. Those are organized into 9 regions with different climate and management practices. Today I'll just be presenting the results of 19 of those locations because 3 of them were ultimately abandoned. But we also, included in the Wheat Seed Book, we also have the conditions of the growing season and disease and insect conditions as well. And I'll start by talking about that. So the 2021-22 growing season had a very promising start. It had 1 to 5 inches of rain falling across the state in September. And because of this, most of the wheat was planted fairly early to ensure good emergence. However, in the western third of the state, no more or very little precipitation was received for the remainder of the fall, causing many fields not to emerge until the next rain event in the spring, regardless of when the wheat was planted. In contrast, however, most central and eastern areas of the state did receive precipitation in the fall and had warmer than average temperatures. That, combined with the early planting, increased the biomass headed into the winter months.
Excellent. Well, we all know how the end of the season really went, how it was a little bit rougher on producers in terms of water, and still experiencing that now. But like you said, a good start to begin with.
A very good start. However, the temperatures during the winter months were about 1 to 4 degrees colder than average, and that extended into the spring when the first 2 weeks of April saw as many as 11 hours below 32 degrees. The majority of the wheat was already in an extended dormant period because of the cooler temperatures, so luckily there wasn't much freeze damage associated during that cold snap in April. However, by May, the entire state was experiencing the lack of precipitation, which was delaying the reproductive development of the wheat and was leading to pretty severe drought stress.
We just mentioned that. I feel like we're going to sound like broken records. We can't emphasize the drought, the impact of it enough, honestly. But, I mean, that continued through May, right?
Exactly. And to exacerbate everything, the second week of May was extremely hot. And so the drought stress, combined with the period of extreme heat stress, caused many fields in the western portion of the state. There's kind of a line from, I'm gesturing on radio, but west of a line from Smith to Pratt counties that started to show very severe symptoms of drought, including curling of the younger leaves and dropping and yellowing of older leaves, and drastically reducing the plant height and the biomass. It was very common to find wheat that was only 9 to 12 inches tall due to the prolonged stresses in western Kansas. Regionally wise, the worst affected was the far southwest Kansas, but severely stressed wheat was found as far east as Pratt County.
Sure, and some of that stress in those regions, was that what kind of led to those 3 locations that were ultimately abandoned?
Yes, they were. We lost the dryland location in Stevens County, which is far southwest because of droughts. Also, Garden City in southwest Kansas and Tribune in northwest Kansas was lost because of hail. But we did get some relief in June when as much as 5 inches fell in western Kansas and helped the wheat maintain some yield potential. There were very isolated pockets in central Kansas that received as much as 13 inches during that time, which led to some waterlogged fields, but that was very isolated. June precipitation was overall very beneficial, which combined with near optimal temperatures and gave the wheat a much-needed boost during grain filling. And the conditions in June were really the salvation of the 21-22 wheat crop after the season-long drought stress. Overall, the average yield for the state was 39 bushels, which was down 12 bushels from last year, but it could have been much, much worse.
Absolutely. I think that was the recurring theme that I heard throughout wheat harvest season was people were surprised at what they did end up with ultimately, which is a good surprise, but it's still a disappointing season nonetheless.
Oh, yes.
And now that we've kind of covered what that growing season included, what were some of the diseases that were really prevalent this time?
Well, one of the positives of the drought stress was the lower incidence of wheat fungal disease. So stripe rust and fusarium head blight were present, but at much lower levels this year. Also, head scab and barley yellow dwarf were greatly reduced. There were still concerns from wheat streak mosaic virus, particularly in the western third of the state. But kind of the prevalent condition of the fields this year were white heads that were reported in many fields, which were most likely caused by drought and heat stress. But there are diseases that are triggered by that drought and heat and also contribute to the loss of colors in the heads. And those diseases were dryland foot rot, or sometimes called fusarium root rot, take-all, and sharp eye spot.
Well, like you said, kind of the positive of the drought was limited disease, but insects were not as lucky, I guess, in that regards, problems?
As I mentioned earlier, the majority of the wheat was planted earlier in the fall of 21, which left it open to attack by grasshoppers and armyworms. Armyworms were more destructive to wheat and brome throughout the entire state this year than they have been for probably 20 years, and prompted more insecticide applications than normal. And in addition to grasshoppers and armyworms, wheat curl mites that vector wheat streak mosaic virus also caused concern this year. But the main issues this year were the drought and heat. But if you would like more information about disease and insects, that can be found for the 30 most popular wheat varieties, can be found in the 2022 Kansas Performance Test winter wheat varieties, the hard copies or online. And more information on disease resistance can be found in a recent publication by Kelsey Anderson, Eric DeWolf, Romulo Lalato, and Jeff Whitworth titled Wheat Variety Disease and Insect Ratings of 2021. And that's housed in the KSRE Publications Library. And also, more information, always more information is better. So I would encourage everyone to check out the Colorado Wheat Variety Database. That address is ramwheatdb.com/database. And this has Kansas information as well as Colorado, Oklahoma, and I believe Texas information about wheat varieties. And another good resource for wheat information is the publication Wheat Varieties for Kansas and the Great Plains 2023. And the address to order that is www.thewheatfarmer.com.
Absolutely. And, you coincidentally mentioned armyworms there, fall armyworms, and that was an issue then, and we're expecting probably this year as well. And we actually just covered that subject. So that'll be good.
Very good.
Good reminder for producers to be on the lookout for that pest. But I know we just covered a lot, Jane, and you included, like I said, again, a lot of those links and resources for producers, and those, again, will be in the show notes of today's page on agtoday.net. But our conversation isn't going to end here. We're going to be back with more ahead on what to expect in this field guide here momentarily. Once again, that was Jane Lingenfelser. She is the coordinator of the crop performance tests here at K-State, and she's covering the 2022 wheat performance tests. So once again, if you're wanting to know more about the 2022 wheat performance test, we'll be back with more ahead with Jane here momentarily. And when we return back, she will include information about the yields of certain varieties in certain regions across the state and how those best varieties actually measured up and compared to past varieties in past years. So once again, stay tuned for that, and we'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today. This is Agriculture Today. We are back after that short break, and we're returning with Jane Lingenfelser. She's the coordinator of the crop performance tests here at K-State, and she's covering the 2022 wheat performance tests. So, Jane, thanks for being with us again.
Thank you.
So now that we've covered a bunch of the generals of what the last season really held, we're going to get into the summaries of yield, which is, I guess, kind of the most important part.
Absolutely, yes. I'll go through each of our 9 regions, and I'll mention the varieties that performed well across all the locations in a region, and also the varieties that have done well in previous years. And I'll also mention that I'm going to list them alphabetically. It's not in order of how they performed, so Westbred should not get mad at me about that.
No biases here.
No, absolutely not. So I'll start in the southeast corner of the state. We had 2 locations, Ottawa in Franklin County and Parsons in Labette County. The average across the southeast region was 71 bushels. And our top yielding varieties in the southeast, AgriPro AP Prolific did well. Also Westbred WB 4422 and WB 4699 did well. In previous years, 4699 has done well. Also Agrimax Cartwright and Polanski Rockstar have done well in the southeast. And also in the southeast, we have a soft wheat test at Parsons. It traditionally has very high yielding potential. This year, it was affected by the lack of precipitation, just like everywhere else. So our average this year was 85 bushels. And our top yielders in the soft test, Beechner Grain BG 206 did well. Also Pioneer P25R74 and Agrimax 505 did well. And in previous years, that Agrimax 505 and 503 have done well, and also the Pioneer P25R74 have done well in the soft tests.
So now that we've covered the southeast, let's go into north central.
North central, we had locations at Belleville in Republic County and Beloit in Mitchell County. And our average across those 2 locations was 54 bushels. And we had quite a few top yielders. AgriPro AP Prolific did well. Also KWA, that's the Kansas Wheat Alliance. KS Ahern, Lima Grain, LCS Runner did well. Also Meridian MS Maverick and Westbred WB 4401 did well in North Central. And in previous years, AgriPro SY Wolverine has done well. Also AgSeco AG Icon, Lima Grain LCS Helix AX, and Westbred WB 4401 have done well in North Central region.
And then moving on to Central.
Central, we had Ellsworth in Ellsworth County, Hillsborough in Marion County, and Assaria in Saline County. The average across the Central region was 68 bushels. And our top yielding varieties there, AgriPro SY Wolverine did well. Also Lima Grain LCS Steel AX and Westbred WB 4422. In previous years, those same varieties have done well. Also Oklahoma Genetics Incorporated Showdown did well. Also Polanski Paradise and Westbred WB 4699.
Moving a little further south onto Newton and Hutchinson.
In our south central region, we have Newton in Harvey County, Hutchinson in Reno County, and St. John in Stafford County. The average across this region was 52 bushels, and our top yielding performers, AgriPro SY Wolverine again, also Cropland CP 7909, Kansas Wheat Alliance KS Providence did well, and Plains Gold Kivari AX did well in the South Central region. And in previous years, that Cropland CP 7909 has done well, KWA KS Ahern did well, and also Plains Gold Whistler did well in the South Central region. And we also had a non-treated, that is not treated with fungicide, location in Wellington in south central Kansas. The average at Wellington was 49 bushels, and varieties that did well in the absence of fungicide. AgSeco AG Radical did well, also OGI Showdown, Plains Gold Whistler, and Polanski Paradise. And in previous years, Paradise has done well. Also, AgriPro AP18AX and Westbred WB 4401 have done well in the non-treated trial.
I've been told as the years go by, knowing varieties will come easier to me. So hopefully the next time we do this, I'll be a little more well-versed and can follow along a bit easier.
I don't know. I've been doing this a long time, and they don't come easy to me.
There's a lot of names. But moving on to the Northwest.
In the Northwest, we started out with 4 locations: Tribune in Greeley County, Colby in Thomas County, Russell in Russell County, and Decatur in Decatur County in the Northwest fallow region. We lost Tribune to a hailstorm 4 days before harvest that caused it to be abandoned, which was heartbreaking because it looked like a very good test. We do have heading and height notes available on the website from Tribune if that is of interest to producers. But the top yielding varieties for the rest of the Northwest region, AgriPro AP18AX did well, Plains Gold Canvas and Whistler, and Westbred WB 4422 did well. And in previous years, Lima Grain LCS Helix AX did well. Also Plains Gold Canvas, Polanski Rockstar, and Westbred WB 4595 did well in the Northwest fallow region.
That is unfortunate that hailstorm came through, but it is nice you guys do have some data for producers maybe in a similar area to compare back to still as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Moving on, we have the Southwest region. This was pretty hard hit by drought and heat, and we lost our test at Hugonton in Stevens County. It had to be abandoned due to lack of data, but we were left with Larned in Pawnee County and Garden City in Finney County, and the average for those locations was 62 bushels. And our top yielders there, AgriPro SY Wolverine, Lima Grain LCS Steel AX, Plains Gold Whistler, and Polanski High Country did well in the Southwest region. And in previous years, that AgriPro SY Wolverine has done well. KWA, the White Wheat Joe, has done well. Also, Lima Grain LCS Atomic AX and Plains Gold Canvas have done well in the Southwest region.
Moving on, I know there were some irrigated plots as well that you guys looked at.
Yes, we started out with 3 irrigated trials. Garden City in Finney County had to be abandoned because of very very high variability this year, but we were left with Hugoton in Stevens County and Colby in Thomas County. And the average across these two locations was 84 bushels. Colby was particularly hard hit, but Hugoton had fairly good yields. I think the average was over 100 bushels this year. Top yielding varieties in the irrigated trials, Cropland CP 7017AX did well. Also Lima Grain LCS Helix AX, Plains Gold Canvas, and Polanski High Country did well in the irrigated trials. And in previous years, also AgriPro SY Wolverine, Lima Grain LCS Atomic AX, and Westbred WB 4699 have done well in the irrigated trials.
A little bit more diversity here, but there was also some hollow stem research that was done as well?
Yes, and this is conducted by Romulo Lolato in Hutchinson, Kansas, and it is a dual-purpose grazing study performed with side-by-side comparisons of grain-only plots and those that have been mowed off to simulate grazing, and complete results can be found at the KSRE Publications Library. The title of that is Dual-Purpose Wheat Variety Performance 2022, but I will note the varieties that were significant in both grain harvest and fall forage dry matter production, and those varieties were AgriPro AP Roadrunner, Lima Grain LCS Chrome, Julep, and Runner were all significantly high in the first hollow stem study in Hutchinson.
Good to know. Well, Jane, if listeners are tuning in and they heard all of that, but they're looking for something maybe a little bit more on paper, it might be easier to read through and take it all in. Yeah. Where can they find that out again?
Well, this was just a very brief overview of all the results that are available. More information can be found at agronomy, that's agronomy.ksu.edu/services/crop-performance-tests, or in the hard copy that will be coming out in High Plains Journal magazine and can be ordered from the KSRE website. A online version of the book can be found at the KSRE Publications Library. That address is ksre.ksu.edu/bookstore, and I would encourage everyone to find as much information as they can. So other resources to look at, the Colorado Wheat Variety Database, that address is ramwheatdb.com/database, and also the Wheat Varieties for Kansas and the Great Plains 2023 publication that can be ordered at www.thewheatfarmer.com. And I would also encourage everyone to keep their environmental conditions in mind when examining the test results, and also to be mindful of their own conditions when selecting a wheat variety. And seasons like this one, with multiple and extensive stresses, can be very hard production-wise, but can also show very good proof of what works best in your area with your similar management.
Absolutely. Some unprecedented conditions for sure, but this will be a very helpful resource for them as they go into planting season. As always, all of the links that she just mentioned will be in the show notes, which can be found on agtoday.net. But Jane, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Once again, that was Jane Lingenfelser. She is the coordinator of the crop performance tests here at K-State. We'll be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today.
This is Agriculture Today. Along with Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Wickman. We end today's program with this week's milk lines. K-State dairy specialist Mike Brouk says that milk prices were at an all-time high in June and July, and that demand looks like it'll remain strong through at least the end of the year.
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy producers concerning milk prices and where we have been and maybe where we're headed. Most of you have seen your June and July numbers, and we had an impressive milk price for Class 1 in June and July here in Kansas, $25.87 per hundredweight of milk, which is an all-time high and an all-time high for the last 30 years as well. Milk price is very cyclic. For those not familiar with the cycles that we endure on the dairy farm, it's quite a shock to realize that in June of 2020, milk was only worth $11.42, Class 1 that is, on our dairy farms. And yet by December, it was worth $19.87, again, Class 1 price. And just 6 months later, it was $25.87. Quite a jump and quite a change in what we see in our monthly paycheck. Well, not exactly, I guess, what we see in our monthly income, because feed prices and other input prices such as fuel and fertilizer have gained tremendously over the last 6 months as well. So it's not like we get to pocket everything that is coming in on the milk check side because of all the additional expenses that we're experiencing at this point. But we are grateful for a record milk price and for what it has done to help us maintain some of our margins. As you look back over the years, milk price does tend to cycle, and sometimes we talk about a 3-year cycle, although here recently that cycle has been much shorter than that. And as we look at where we're headed in the future, what does that mean? I'm not sure that anybody really knows for sure. It seems as though that milk production is fairly stable across the country. The hot summer, particularly what's going on in the Southwest, has tended to hold production down. So as we go into the latter part of 2022, it's very likely that we should maintain fairly decent milk prices and maybe not suffer the sharp declines that we have during the other peak cycles that we've seen in the previous years. One of the big factors will be, how does this milk price that we receive on the farm, how is it affecting consumers? It's kind of interesting. The Milk Marketing Administrator recently published some numbers. These are survey numbers where they surveyed the value of homogenized whole milk across 4 cities here in the Midwest. They looked at the price in St. Louis, Denver, Oklahoma City, and Kansas City, and all have seen an increase in price due to the increase in the price of raw milk. However, it's not exactly equal all over the board. For example, if you look at average prices in the Kansas City area, about $4.75 per gallon of milk. Same token, if you look at Oklahoma City, just a little over $3.50, Denver about the same, and St. Louis about the same. So it seems as though that the prices that consumers are needing to pay probably varies depending on where they live and their locality. And keep in mind that there can be differences between the states in regulations as far as how the price of milk is set in the grocery store, and that may impact some of those things as well. But in general, when Class 1 prices do go up, that means that the price that consumers have to pay go up. And that's not just for homogenized milk. That would be for a lot of our other dairy products as well. So keep in mind that consumers are bearing part of the bill that you might see for that increase in your Class 1 price on the dairy farm. However, consumption continues to remain strong. So we move into the start of the school season. We expect that demand will pick up a bit, and we will need to produce more milk just to fill the start of school. So is there optimism for maintaining higher milk prices through the end of 2022? I think there is. However, probably won't be at the record levels that we've seen the last couple of months, but I think it will be at a level substantially more than what we had seen the previous year. This is Mike Brouk with K-State Research and Extension.
Thanks, Mike. And that'll do it for the Tuesday edition of Agriculture Today. For Samantha Bennett, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.